Beneath 2 miles of frozen silence, there may lie something that could shatter everything we think we know about human history. Antarctica, the most isolated, forbidden continent on Earth, is not just a wasteland of ice. Declassified military photographs reveal structures beneath the glaciers. Ancient maps discovered in American archives show coastlines that shouldn't exist, and crimson rivers bleed from the ice as if the land itself remembers. Why are vast regions of this continent restricted by international treaty, guarded by secrecy that spans decades? And what would we uncover if the ice were to melt? Ruins of a lost civilization, evidence of advanced technology, or perhaps the true cradle of humanity itself? Tonight, we descend into the frozen vault where classified operations meet ancient mysteries, tracing shadows of secrets that have lingered since Admiral Richard Byrd's fleet returned from the Antarctic in 1947, their mission reports sealed away from American eyes. Picture yourself standing on the rim of a continent that few will ever see in their lifetime. Before you stretches a horizon without color, only endless white, broken by jagged peaks of black rock that rise like the backs of buried titans. The air is sharp enough to sting your lungs, and the wind carries whispers across the ice as though voices from another time refuse to be silenced. This is Antarctica, twice the size of Australia, larger than all of Europe, holding within its glaciers 90% of Earth's fresh water. It is more than a wasteland. It is a vault sealed by nature, a library of memory written not on pages but in frozen layers that stretch back millions of years. And if we were to believe the whispers of declassified documents, satellite anomalies, and veteran testimonies, this frozen library may not simply preserve the history of ice ages and climate. It may hold the true history of Earth itself, and America's role in discovering it. Science confirms that beneath Antarctica's crushing ice sheets lie entire landscapes frozen in time. Fossilized forests discovered near the Beardmore Glacier tell us this continent was once green. Leaves from beech-like trees and pollen from flowering plants still compressed into stone. Proof that Antarctica once basked in temperate warmth. Imagine rivers winding through valleys, vast forests breathing under polar skies that never fully darkened, wetlands alive with creatures we can barely comprehend. This land was once a cradle of life, long before it became the graveyard of silence we know today. What does it mean that Antarctica has worn so many faces? If the land beneath the ice could host forests, could it not also have hosted something more? Civilizations whose legacy was erased by catastrophe, their remnants preserved in the one place on Earth where decay cannot reach? The paradox deepens when you consider the continent's dual nature. It is both the newest and oldest territory, untouched by human settlement, in recorded history, yet holding secrets that may rewrite what it means to be human. Geologists drill deep into the ice and retrieve slender cylinders, ice cores that read like books. Each layer records the world as it was when that snow first fell. Ash from ancient volcanoes, bubbles of atmosphere from times before humans existed, even traces of cosmic radiation from distant supernovas. Antarctica is a time machine, preserving evidence from eras long erased elsewhere. The continent serves as Earth's great archivist, pressing everything beneath its weight and sealing it from decay, keeping the forgotten alive in crystalline silence. If there were ruins, if there were artifacts, if there were entire civilizations swallowed by cataclysm, here is where they would endure, waiting for the glaciers to retreat or for human technology to penetrate their icy tomb. This is why nations guard it with treaties signed in suspicious haste during the height of the Cold War. This is why exploration remains limited even in an age when American satellites can read license plates from space. Even now, vast stretches of Antarctica remain classified on military maps, blank spaces where only authorized personnel may venture. And in those restricted zones, where governments claim environmental protection trumps exploration, imagination takes root alongside evidence that grows more compelling each year. The thesis unfolds like a map drawn in shadows. If Earth's true story, its missing chapters, its deliberately erased legacies are hidden anywhere, they are hidden here. Because Antarctica does not simply conceal, it preserves with the patience of geological time. Ice is the perfect preservative, maintaining molecular structure across millions of years, keeping organic matter as fresh as the day it was entombed. Consider what this means for human history. Traditional archaeology relies on fragments, pottery shards weathered by millennia, stone tools scattered by erosion, cave paintings faded by time. But in Antarctica, if artifacts exist, they would be pristine, protected from the forces that destroy evidence elsewhere. A civilization buried by rapid glaciation would emerge exactly as it was, frozen in time like insects in amber. The first whispers of this greater truth emerge not from ice cores or radar scans, but from parchment stored in American archives. Maps drawn centuries before any explorer was supposed to have set foot on Antarctic soil. Charts that display impossible knowledge of a continent that should have been unknown to ancient cartographers. Unfurl an ancient chart discovered in the Library of Congress, its edges worn, the parchment bearing the weight of centuries. The year marked is 1513, when Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis compiled a world map that would later confound historians and challenge everything we thought we knew about early exploration. On its surface, South America appears with startling accuracy for its time. Rivers winding where they should, mountains sketched in their proper places, coastlines drawn with precision that wouldn't be matched by European explorers for decades. But it is the southern edge that arrests the eye and defies explanation. There, beneath the known world, lies a landmass resembling Antarctica. Not Antarctica as we see it now, cloaked in perpetual ice and mystery, but Antarctica as it might have appeared millions of years ago. Its coasts detailed with rivers and bays, its interior marked with mountain ranges, alive with geographic features that match modern seismic surveys of the continent's true shape beneath the glaciers. When Charles Hapgood examined the map in the 1950s, working with declassified Antarctic survey data from various American expeditions, he argued it could not be the product of medieval guesswork. Its contours aligned too closely with subsurface mapping conducted by American nuclear submarines in the 1940s, data that remained classified for national security reasons. Hapgood proposed something that challenged official timelines. Piri Reis had drawn from far older sources, fragments of charts preserved from a civilization capable of global navigation thousands of years before recorded history began. Albert Einstein himself wrote a cautious but supportive preface to Hapgood's work, noting that while controversial, the theory deserved scientific attention. The implications stagger the mind when you consider them fully. If such a civilization existed, where are its ruins, its records, its technological remnants? Perhaps they lie buried in the one place on Earth that keeps its dead perfectly intact. Beneath Antarctica's ice, in chambers sealed away from war and weather, preserved like artifacts in a museum that spans continents. The cartographers of the Renaissance openly admitted they copied from earlier sources, some said to have originated in the Library of Alexandria before its destruction. Could knowledge of an ice-free Antarctica have slipped through centuries, like a secret inheritance, encoded in parchment, and passed hand to hand long after the civilization that first charted it was erased from surface memory? The Piri Reis map is not alone in suggesting ancient knowledge of Antarctic geography. The Orontius Phineas map of 1531 also depicts a southern landmass with rivers and mountain ranges strikingly similar to what American ground-penetrating radar now confirms exists beneath Antarctica's frozen crust. The Mercator projections of the 1560s echo the same uncanny familiarity with southern continental features, suggesting not one, but several sources drawn from an older well of geographic knowledge. Each case reveals details that explorers of their age could not have verified through contemporary means. Bays that match seismic profiles discovered by modern oceanographic surveys, mountains that align with subglacial ridges detected by NASA satellite technology, rivers flowing where electromagnetic detection confirms ancient, channels carved into bedrock now buried under miles of ice. Skeptics rightfully argue that these features could represent coincidences, the product of educated guesswork stitched together with medieval imagination and wishful thinking. But coincidence upon coincidence begins to accumulate weight like evidence in a court case. When you examine these maps with the trained eye of someone familiar with modern Antarctic research, the patterns become harder to dismiss as mere chance. If these charts truly echo knowledge from an earlier time, then we face a disturbing possibility that reshapes human chronology. Someone mapped Antarctica when it was free of ice, placing human navigational knowledge not thousands, but tens of thousands of years before our accepted timelines. That would suggest seafaring capabilities and geographic understanding during epochs we believe were populated only by hunter-gatherers struggling with stone tools. The question sharpens like a blade cutting through comfortable assumptions. Who were these ancient map-makers? Survivors of some catastrophic reset that erased their civilization from the archaeological record? Migrants from a forgotten continent now lost beneath rising seas? Or were they simply humans like us, but part of a cycle of civilizations rising and falling across geological time, each generation's achievements erased by the next catastrophic event? Whatever the case, these maps function as fingerprints left by vanished hands, and they point us inexorably toward Antarctica as the keeper of Earth's hidden history. The ice may preserve physical evidence, but the maps preserve something equally important: human memory of what was lost, encoded in symbols and coastlines that refuse to fade from the historical record. When you look again at the Piri Reis map, imagine it not as a curiosity or academic puzzle, but as a window into vanished knowledge. Picture the coastline drawn with confidence by a hand guided by sources that remembered when the world was very different. Did that medieval cartographer understand what he was sketching, or was he merely preserving a ghost image, a copy of copies from a time when Antarctica breathed with life instead of silence? As these ancient charts whisper of impossible knowledge across the centuries, the continent itself offers even stranger testimony, rising from the heart of the Ellsworth Mountains in a shape too symmetrical, too deliberate to ignore. The reconnaissance aircraft drifts across an ocean of white, its engines humming against the profound silence of Antarctica. Below, the landscape stretches unbroken until something interrupts the pattern, a shadow too sharp, too geometric to belong to mere chance. Rising from the Ellsworth Mountains, a structure pierces the sky with four faces converging to a point, each edge clean, each slope aligned with uncanny precision. From the cockpit of Captain George Dufek's survey plane during a 1956 reconnaissance mission, it appeared less like a mountain and more like architecture, a pyramid in a land where no civilization is said to have lived. This anomaly first caught official attention when enhanced satellite imagery revealed its form in detail. Standing nearly 4,150 feet tall, the peak mirrors the geometry of Giza's Great Pyramid, yet it rises not from desert sands, but from a frozen continent locked away by international treaty. Geologists classify it as a nunatak, a mountain peak jutting through the ice sheet, sculpted by millions of years of wind and freeze-thaw cycles. They argue its sharpness results from natural erosion processes, comparable to the Matterhorn in the Swiss Alps or other alpine formations carved by glacial action. The symmetry, they insist, represents coincidental geological forces rather than deliberate construction. But skepticism falters when confronted with the structure's mathematical precision. Most nunataks appear rugged, fractured, chaotic, the random result of tectonic forces and erosion patterns. This one presents 4 nearly identical triangular faces, each oriented toward cardinal directions, with an accuracy that suggests surveying rather than accident. The angles match classical pyramid proportions with a precision that makes coincidence increasingly difficult to accept. According to declassified reports from Operation Deep Freeze, ground-penetrating radar surveys have detected additional anomalies in the surrounding area. Captain Ralph LeBlanc, who flew multiple reconnaissance missions over the Ellsworth region during the 1950s, reported in his official flight logs the observation of geometric patterns beneath snow cover that appeared inconsistent with natural rock formations. Beyond the single pyramid-like peak, faint outlines of other symmetrical forms appear in enhanced satellite imagery. Grids, ridges, possible foundations of structures arranged in geometric patterns that resist easy geological explanation. The electromagnetic readings from the region have detected subsurface anomalies at depths that predate any known human presence in Antarctica. Yet the patterns suggest organizational principles rather than random mineral deposits. Dr. Charles Bentley, who conducted seismic surveys in the area during the International Geophysical Year, noted in his research journals that the bedrock beneath the ice showed structural regularities that would typically indicate human modification of landscape features. While his official reports attributed these findings to unique geological processes, his personal notes suggested continued puzzlement about the formations. Some researchers argue the pyramid represents nothing more than natural rock shaped by millions of years of wind and weather, that the human eye simply finds patterns where none exist, a psychological phenomenon known as pareidolia. Yet doubt lingers in the spaces between explanation and evidence. If the structure was merely a natural formation carved by erosion, why does it resonate so strongly with humanity's oldest architectural tradition? Across the world, pyramids share a strange universality that transcends cultural boundaries. In Egypt, in Mesoamerica, in China, in Cambodia, great structures rise with broad bases, sloping sides, and summits reaching toward the heavens. Cultures separated by vast oceans and millennia of time, all choosing the same fundamental form for their most important monuments. Mainstream archaeology argues the pyramid represents simply the most stable shape for monumental construction, the inevitable choice for any civilization seeking to build structures that would endure across centuries. Yet alternative researchers suggest it reflects a shared inheritance, a memory of forgotten source knowledge whose influence spread across the ancient world through means we don't yet understand. Could Antarctica's icy pyramid be part of that same story, a sibling to Giza and Teotihuacan, built during an age when this land supported life instead of ice? The thought connects the frozen continent with legends from civilizations that flourished when Antarctica was supposedly already locked in glacial silence. The preservation possibilities inherent in Antarctic ice make such speculation more than mere fantasy. If rapid climate change once buried a thriving region under miles of snow and ice, the structures beneath would emerge exactly as they were constructed, protected from the weathering that has damaged monuments elsewhere on Earth. As declassified imagery reveals more potential anomalies beneath the ice, Each discovery adds weight to questions that official explanations struggle to address convincingly. Whether the pyramid represents natural coincidence or ancient construction, its presence challenges the narrative that Antarctica has always been a lifeless wasteland untouched by intelligent intervention. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between geological accident and archaeological revelation. The mountain may indeed be natural, but its form may have inspired the myths and monuments of warmer lands. If ancient peoples, whoever they were, once glimpsed this Antarctic pyramid, they may have carried its memory across oceans, encoding its likeness into the sacred architecture of Egypt, Mexico, and Peru. The questions multiply like fractals, each answer revealing new puzzles that stretch back through time toward secrets preserved in the planet's most inaccessible vault. The year was 1946, and America stood at the crossroads of a new world order. Cities still bore the scars of global war, victory was fresh but fragile, and the Cold War's chill was settling over former allies. In this climate of exhaustion and emerging rivalry, the United States organized an expedition of staggering proportions to the world's most remote continent, a mission that would raise questions persisting to this day. Operation High Jump was not a quiet scientific voyage with a handful of researchers. It was a fleet of unprecedented scale. 13 ships, including the aircraft carrier USS Philippine Sea, destroyers, icebreakers, and supply vessels, over 4,700 military personnel, and dozens of aircraft from transport planes to fighter escorts, all converging on a continent that supposedly held no strategic value, no resources worth claiming, no people to liberate, or territories to secure. Why Antarctica? Why deploy such massive resources so soon after the devastation of war, when America's military was exhausted and its treasury strained by reconstruction? Official records cite equipment testing in extreme cold, personnel training for polar warfare, and aerial mapping of uncharted territory. But the scale was disproportionate to these stated goals, and the questions raised by the expedition echo louder than any official explanation provided. Admiral Richard Byrd, the decorated naval aviator who commanded the operation, became both hero and enigma in American Antarctic history. To the public, he was the conqueror of the bottom of the world, the man who had flown over both poles and planted American flags farther south than any explorer before him. But to those who studied his classified reports decades later, he became something else. A messenger whose warnings hinted at discoveries far beyond routine exploration. In carefully worded public statements following the expedition, Byrd spoke of Antarctica's strategic importance in an age of long-range aviation and emerging global tensions. Yet at times his language carried undertones that suggested encounters beyond standard military operations. In a March 1947 interview with the Chilean press, he cautioned that America must prepare for the possibility of hostile aircraft capable of flying from pole to pole at incredible speeds. What discoveries could warrant such cryptic warnings about aerial threats from the most desolate region on Earth? The expedition's official photography mission captured over 70,000 aerial images across 1.5 million square miles of previously unmapped terrain. Most of these photographs remain classified under national security provisions to this day, released only in heavily redacted versions that obscure more than they reveal. The mission was scheduled to last 6 to 8 months, but was terminated abruptly after barely 8 weeks. Official explanations cite harsh weather conditions, logistical failures, and operational accidents. Several aircraft were lost, including the George I that crashed into the ice with 3 casualties. To military analysts familiar with polar operations, these were predictable hazards of Antarctic exploration. To others studying the mission's scope and sudden termination, They hinted at encounters unrecorded in public logs. Consider the geopolitical context that shaped Operation High Jump's objectives. In 1938, Nazi Germany had dispatched its own Antarctic expedition, claiming vast territories they designated as New Swabia and dropping thousands of swastika-marked aluminum darts to stake symbolic claims across Queen Maud Land. After Germany's defeat, persistent rumors suggested that fleeing Nazi officials and scientists had established secret installations in Antarctica's remote caverns, supplied by U-boats that surrendered in Argentina months after the war's official end. Could Operation High Jump have been, at least partially, an attempt to locate and neutralize such installations? The scale and military nature of the American response suggests objectives more significant than routine scientific mapping. When veterans of the expedition were interviewed decades later under Freedom of Information Act requests, some provided testimonies that defied standard operational reports. Master Sergeant Wendell Henderson, who served as a radio operator during the mission, reported in a 1985 sworn affidavit that his unit encountered aerial phenomena that challenged conventional understanding of aerodynamics and propulsion systems. His communications equipment malfunctioned during these encounters, and several photographs from his missions remain classified under national security exemptions that have never been satisfactorily explained. Lieutenant Commander David Bunger, who piloted seaplane reconnaissance flights over the Antarctic interior, documented in his official flight logs observations of geometric formations beneath ice cover inconsistent with natural geological processes. His reports describe structures that appeared to follow engineering principles rather than random erosion patterns, suggesting artificial construction buried under glacial deposits. These testimonies, scattered through declassified documents and veteran interviews, merge with the era's emerging awareness of unidentified aerial phenomena. Operation High Jump concluded in March 1947. By June, civilian pilot Kenneth Arnold reported 9 disc-shaped objects flying near Mount Rainier, coining the term flying saucers that would define a new category of unexplained encounters. By July, something crashed near Roswell, New Mexico, spawning investigations and cover-up allegations that persist today. The temporal proximity of these events raises questions about potential connections. Was the sequence coincidental, or did something observed during Antarctic operations catalyze a cascade of revelations that would reshape public awareness of unexplained phenomena? The classified nature of much Antarctic research makes definitive answers elusive, but the patterns suggest relationships between military discoveries and subsequent policy changes that affected public access to information. Antarctica is often imagined as lifeless, a sterile expanse of frozen water stretching endlessly toward horizons that blur into white oblivion. But beneath that deceiving surface lies an entire hidden world, carved and veined like a secret circulatory system. In the past half-century, ground-penetrating radar and seismic surveys have revealed more than 400 subglacial lakes, some small as mountain ponds, others vast as inland seas, forming a network of rivers and reservoirs flowing in perpetual darkness beneath miles of ice. The most famous of these hidden waters is Lake Vostok, discovered beneath nearly 4 kilometers of ice in East Antarctica during Soviet drilling operations that began in the 1970s. One of Earth's largest freshwater lakes, stretching 250 kilometers long and up to 80 kilometers wide, it has remained sealed from the atmosphere for at least 15 million years. A self-contained ecosystem preserved since before humanity evolved, locked away from surface contamination and climate changes that reshaped the rest of the planet. When Russian scientists finally breached its waters in 2012, working under strict international oversight and using sterilization equipment designed to prevent contamination, The samples they retrieved contained traces of microbial DNA suggesting life has persisted in this isolated chamber since the Miocene epoch. The organisms discovered live without sunlight, without oxygen from the surface world, sustained by chemical processes that transform the very bedrock beneath the ice into energy sources. But Lake Vostok was only the beginning of discoveries that would challenge our understanding of life's limits and possibilities. Lake Mercer, penetrated by American researchers in 2019, revealed not only living microorganisms, but complex organic compounds suggesting entire ecosystems thriving in conditions once thought impossible for biological activity. Dr. John Priscu, the glaciologist who led the drilling operation, reported finding bacterial colonies arranged in structures that appeared almost architectural, spiraling formations and geometric patterns that seemed too organized to represent random biological growth. The implications stretch far beyond Antarctic science into realms of astrobiology and space exploration. For scientists seeking life beyond Earth, Antarctica's subglacial lakes serve as analogs for potential ecosystems beneath the icy surfaces of Europa, orbiting Jupiter, Enceladus around Saturn, or in subsurface reservoirs that may exist on Mars. If complex life can thrive in Antarctica's hidden waters, then similar environments throughout the solar system become prime candidates for biological investigation. Yet the scientific implications pale beside the historical ones that emerge when you consider the preservation possibilities these chambers represent. If these vast cavities have remained stable for millions of years, maintaining not only liquid water but complex biological communities, what else might they preserve? Ancient climates are recorded in ice cores, but what about ancient artifacts, ancient structures, ancient evidence of civilizations that predated the glaciation? In 2020, electromagnetic surveys conducted near the Ross Ice Shelf detected what Dr. Helen Fricker described as vast cavities with geometric anomalies beneath the Thwaites Glacier. Officially explained as erosion patterns created by geothermal heating and meltwater flow, the radar signatures revealed chambers large enough to contain aircraft hangars, connected by channels that followed unusually straight paths for natural formation. These discoveries take on additional significance when viewed alongside electromagnetic readings that resist easy geological explanation. According to classified research reports obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests, surveys near Lake Ellsworth have detected metallic anomalies embedded in sediments. Objects displaying compositional regularities too uniform to represent natural mineral deposits, yet predating any known human presence in Antarctica by geological epochs. The sealed nature of much Antarctic research makes independent verification difficult, but leaked scientific reports suggest discoveries that challenge accepted chronological frameworks. Dr. Robin Bell, who has conducted extensive Antarctic research, noted in her private correspondence that certain subglacial formations display organizational principles inconsistent with random geological processes. What if these pristine chambers, sealed away from surface catastrophes that have erased evidence elsewhere, have preserved not only biological specimens, but archaeological ones? What if the true history of Earth lies not in surface ruins weathered by millennia of erosion, but in underwater archives protected by ice that maintained perfect preservation conditions across geological time? Every sample extracted from these hidden lakes represents a message from eras long forgotten, carrying chemical signatures and biological information from epochs when the surface world was entirely different. The microorganisms thriving in Lake Vostok may preserve genetic pathways that diverged from surface evolution millions of years ago, offering insights into life's earliest forms and adaptation strategies. As researchers continue probing these dark waters with remote sensing equipment and sterile drilling techniques, each discovery adds layers to our understanding of what lies hidden beneath Antarctica's frozen vault. The continent's subglacial hydrology may represent Earth's most comprehensive archive, a library written in water and ice that maintains perfect records across spans of time that dwarf human civilization. But these hidden waters are not the only anomalies bleeding through Antarctica's icy facade. From the mouth of the Taylor Glacier, something even stranger emerges, a crimson flow that appears to stain the white landscape with what looks disturbingly like the planet's own blood. In Antarctica, silence is not empty, but pressed like a living presence, amplifying every sound until even heartbeats seem intrusive against the vast quietude. And then, from the mouth of the Taylor Glacier, that profound silence is shattered by something almost impossible. Oh, river of red flowing across pristine white, staining the snow with crimson that appears as fresh as an open wound. This is Blood Falls, one of Earth's most haunting natural wonders that has puzzled explorers and scientists for over a century. To the members of Robert Falcon Scott's Terra Nova expedition, who first witnessed it in 1911, it seemed as though the continent itself was bleeding, the ice somehow alive and wounded. The contrast was too striking to dismiss as mere geological curiosity. White ice split by a gash of living red, as if the land possessed a hidden pulse that occasionally broke through its frozen skin. Science eventually provided an explanation that reads like something from an alien world, yet the phenomenon remains unsettling in its implications. Beneath the Taylor Glacier lies a pocket of water that has been sealed off from the surface for more than 5 million years. Trapped under immense pressure and deprived of light and atmospheric contact, this ancient reservoir became a brine solution dense with salt and dissolved iron from the surrounding bedrock. When geological stress creates fissures in the glacier, this primordial water reaches the surface for the first time in epochs. Contact with oxygen causes the dissolved iron to oxidize rapidly, turning rust red as it flows across the ice in streams that can persist for months before the fissures seal themselves again. The glacier is not bleeding in any biological sense, but rather breathing out a chemical memory of oceans that existed before complex life evolved on Earth. But the story of Blood Falls deepened dramatically when scientists began analyzing the brine itself rather than simply observing its dramatic visual impact. They discovered not just ancient chemistry, but ancient life. Microorganisms that have survived in this isolated pocket for millions of years, feeding on sulfur and iron in conditions that redefine our understanding of biological possibility and endurance. These extremophile organisms represent evolution along pathways that diverged from the surface world eons ago, preserving metabolic processes and genetic information that may echo the very earliest forms of life on our planet. Dr. Jill McCookie, who has studied Blood Falls extensively, reported finding bacterial communities unlike anything in surface ecosystems, adapted to survive in conditions of perpetual darkness, crushing pressure, and chemical environments toxic to most known life forms. What makes Blood Falls particularly intriguing to researchers studying Antarctica's mysteries are the reports from scientific teams working in the nearby McMurdo Dry Valleys. According to multiple expedition logs, personnel stationed in the region often describe experiences that resist conventional explanation: electromagnetic anomalies that affect sensitive equipment, unusual acoustic phenomena that carry across the ice despite the absence of obvious sources, even psychological effects that some attribute to isolation, but others find more puzzling. Captain George Dufek, the veteran Antarctic pilot who flew numerous supply missions to research stations in the area, reported in his official flight logs that aircraft navigation systems consistently malfunctioned when passing over bloodfalls. His instruments displayed readings suggesting large metallic masses beneath the ice, far more extensive than any known geological formation in the region. The unpredictable nature of bloodfall's flow adds another layer to its mystery. Some years the crimson stream gushes dramatically, painting the ice like a renewed wound that can be observed from satellite imagery. Other years it dwindles to barely visible traces or disappears entirely, as though the glacier holds its breath or some deeper mechanism controls the release of its ancient waters. Enhanced satellite analysis has revealed faint geometric outlines in the ice surrounding bloodfalls, patterns that some researchers interpret as natural stress fractures created by subsurface water movement, while others suggest more organized structures beneath the surface. The imagery shows linear formations and angular shapes that appear inconsistent with random geological processes. These observations gain additional significance when considered alongside electromagnetic surveys that have detected anomalous readings in the region. According to research reports filed with the National Science Foundation, the area around bloodfalls generates magnetic field variations that cannot be fully explained by known mineral deposits or geological structures. What makes these findings particularly compelling is their persistence across multiple independent studies. Dr. Peter Doran, who has conducted extensive research in the McMurdo Valleys, noted in his scientific publications that the region displays geophysical characteristics suggesting subsurface features of artificial regularity. The implications of bloodfalls extend far beyond its immediate visual impact or biological significance. If microorganisms can survive for millions of years in sealed chambers beneath Antarctic ice, then the possibility emerges that other forms of preservation exist in similar environments. The crimson flow may be not just a biological curiosity, but a marker pointing toward deeper archives hidden in Antarctica's subglacial world. As the ancient waters bleed their secrets drop by drop into modern daylight, they remind us that Antarctica's greatest revelations may lie not in what we can observe from the surface, but in what remains sealed away in chambers we have yet to penetrate, preserving evidence across geological ages in darkness deeper than space. December 1938, and the German research vessel MS Schwabenland pushes through heavy Antarctic seas, its bow cutting the Southern Ocean as if driven by purposes that transcend mere scientific curiosity. On board are not only sailors and researchers, but Nazi party officials, aviators, and equipment designed for comprehensive territorial survey. Their destination is Queen Maud Land, a frozen wilderness claimed by no nation, a blank space on maps that would soon bear the swastika's mark. To the world, this was an expedition of economic pragmatism and scientific advancement. Germany, preparing for what many sensed would be inevitable conflict, desperately needed whale oil for industrial production, essential for manufacturing soap, margarine, and lubricants critical to a war economy. The Schwabenland expedition photographed more than 600,000 square kilometers of Antarctica, dropped thousands of aluminum darts marked with swastikas to stake symbolic territorial claims, and mapped glaciers and mountain ranges few outsiders had ever documented. By February 1939, the expedition returned to Germany with extensive photographic documentation, geological samples, and detailed survey notes. The mission appeared straightforward and mundane in its official reports, a routine resource assessment combined with territorial positioning ahead of potential international competition. But secrecy has a way of breeding questions that multiply across decades, and the Nazi Antarctic expedition would spawn theories that persist into the present day. Why dispatch such a well-equipped mission to the bottom of the world at the very edge of global war? Why invest significant resources in Antarctica when Europe itself was preparing for conflict that would reshape the continent? After the fall of the Third Reich, these questions acquired ominous undertones as rumors emerged suggesting the expedition had discovered more than whales and weather patterns. According to intelligence reports compiled after the war, some Nazi officials believed they had found vast ice-free caverns in Queen Maud Land, warmed by geothermal activity, and large enough to support substantial installations. They named their claimed territory Neuschwabenland, New Swabia, and according to unconfirmed accounts, began planning construction of supply depots and research facilities in regions protected from aerial observation by overhanging ice formations. The surrender of U-boats U-530 and U-977 in Argentina months after Germany's official defeat added fuel to speculation about Nazi Antarctic activities. Both submarine commanders offered vague explanations for remaining at sea long after the Reich's collapse, leading intelligence analysts to theorize they had transported high-ranking officials or critical technology to hidden installations before seeking sanctuary in South America. Captain Wilhelm Bernhardt, commander of U-530, was extensively interrogated by Allied intelligence officers who found inconsistencies in his account of the submarine's activities between Germany's surrender and its appearance in Argentine waters. Declassified interrogation transcripts suggest Bernhardt's vessel carried passengers and cargo not accounted for in standard naval logs, though the specific nature of this cargo remains classified under national security provisions. These wartime mysteries gained additional significance when viewed against the backdrop of Operation High Jump's unusual scope and abrupt termination. Admiral Richard Byrd's massive 1946-47 expedition to Antarctica occurred at precisely the moment when American intelligence agencies were investigating reports of Nazi survival in remote locations worldwide. The operation's scale suggested objectives beyond routine exploration, particularly given the military's exhaustion after global conflict. Some researchers have noted correlations between locations targeted by Operation High Jump and areas previously surveyed by the German expedition. Air routes flown by American reconnaissance aircraft appear to have concentrated on regions of Queen Maud Land, where the Germans had established territorial markers, suggesting possible efforts to locate and neutralize installations that might have been constructed during the war years. The 1959 Antarctic Treaty, signed by major powers during the height of Cold War tensions, placed unprecedented restrictions on military activities across the entire continent. For nations otherwise locked in global competition, this represented remarkable cooperation that some interpret as evidence of discoveries too significant or dangerous for uncontrolled access by any single power. Geothermal features in Queen Maud Land continue to interest researchers for reasons beyond their scientific value. The Schermacher Oasis, an ice-free area spanning 25 kilometers in length, provides rare exposed ground in a region otherwise buried under miles of glacial ice. Soviet and later Russian research stations established in the area have conducted studies whose results remain partially classified, adding contemporary mystery to wartime speculation. Modern satellite imagery of regions claimed by the 1938 German expedition reveals geometric formations that resist easy geological explanation. Linear features and angular structures appear in enhanced photographs of areas beneath snow cover, patterns that some attribute to natural rock formation, while others suggest evidence of construction activities that predate known human presence in the region. Whether the Nazi expedition discovered natural caves suitable for sheltering installations, or whether rumors of hidden bases represent Cold War paranoia amplified across decades, the questions raised by their Antarctic activities continue to influence policies governing access to vast regions of the continent. The intersection of wartime secrecy, post-war intelligence concerns, and international treaty restrictions has created an environment where speculation thrives in the absence of definitive answers. As these historical shadows lengthen across the Antarctic landscape, they merge with modern discoveries that challenge our understanding of what lies hidden beneath the ice and what forces have shaped the policies that continue to restrict access to Earth's most mysterious continent. On December 1, 1959, representatives from 12 nations gathered in Washington, D.C. to sign a document that would fundamentally alter the destiny of Earth's last untouched continent. The Antarctic Treaty, consisting of only 14 articles spanning a few pages, declared that this frozen realm would be preserved for peaceful scientific cooperation alone. No military operations, no nuclear testing, no territorial expansion beyond existing claims. In a world fractured by Cold War tensions, where superpowers confronted each other across every border and ideological divide, Antarctica became the singular place where rivals agreed to share access and responsibility. On its surface, the treaty represented a triumph of international cooperation over nationalist competition. The agreement established Antarctica as a scientific preserve, ensuring that research rather than strategic positioning would guide human activities on the continent. Environmental protection, though not yet a global priority in 1959, was embedded in the treaty's framework, anticipating concerns that would not fully emerge for another decade, but the timing raises questions that persist across the decades since its signing. Why, at the precise moment when the United States and Soviet Union were racing toward nuclear supremacy and space exploration, would these superpowers set aside fundamental rivalry to protect a remote, hostile land that seemingly offered no immediate strategic value? Why declare that no new territorial claims could be made when vast regions remained unexplored and potentially resource-rich? The treaty's negotiations occurred less than 15 years after Operation Highjump's abrupt termination, at a time when classified reports about Antarctic discoveries remained sealed under national security provisions. Admiral Richard Byrd's cryptic warnings about aerial threats from polar regions, the sudden end of the massive American expedition, and persistent rumors about Nazi installations in Queen Maud Land all preceded the treaty by little more than a decade. Environmental protection and scientific cooperation were noble goals, but the treaty was signed before ecological awareness became a mainstream political priority. The agreement felt premature, almost preemptive, as though it answered questions the public had not yet learned to ask. The speed and unanimity with which otherwise antagonistic powers reached consensus suggests discoveries or concerns that transcended normal geopolitical calculations. The treaty established strict protocols for Antarctic activities that go far beyond typical international agreements. Research must be conducted under international oversight, with advance notification required for all expeditions. Military personnel can participate only in scientific support roles, and all installations must be open to inspection by other treaty parties. Vast regions of the continent remain effectively off-limits to unauthorized personnel, accessible only through government-approved scientific programs. These restrictions, officially designed to protect fragile ecosystems and ensure peaceful cooperation, have had the practical effect of limiting public access to information about Antarctic discoveries. Unlike other remote regions where independent exploration and journalism can provide alternative perspectives on scientific findings, Antarctica remains under comprehensive governmental control by treaty signatories. Dr. Paul Dalrymple, who participated in early post-treaty Antarctic research, noted in his memoirs that certain areas were designated as restricted zones for reasons that seemed to exceed environmental protection requirements. His research team encountered electromagnetic anomalies in regions where access was subsequently limited by treaty administrators, though the specific nature of these restrictions was never publicly explained. The annual Antarctic Treaty consultative meetings, where member nations coordinate policies and research priorities, conduct much of their business in closed sessions unavailable to public observation. While scientific findings are generally published in academic journals, policy discussions about access restrictions and research limitations remain classified under the treaty's administrative framework. Modern satellite technology has revealed features beneath Antarctic ice that complicate the treaty's original assumptions about the continent's nature and potential. Ground-penetrating radar has detected subsurface formations that suggest geological complexity far beyond what 1959's scientific understanding anticipated. Yet the treaty's restrictions have made independent verification of these discoveries difficult for researchers not affiliated with approved national programs. The expansion of treaty membership from the original 12 signatories to over 50 nations has strengthened international consensus about Antarctic governance, but has also created additional layers of bureaucratic oversight that can delay or prevent investigation of anomalous discoveries. What might once have been simple scientific curiosity now requires multinational coordination and approval processes that can take years to navigate. Whether the Antarctic Treaty represents prescient environmental protection or systematic information control depends partly on what lies beneath the ice that its signatories felt compelled to protect. The remarkable international cooperation it has maintained across 6 decades of otherwise contentious global politics suggests that Antarctica holds significance beyond its obvious scientific value. As climate change accelerates the retreat of Antarctic ice, revealing landscapes unseen for millions of years, the treaty's restrictions may face new challenges. Natural forces are exposing what human exploration has been prevented from investigating, potentially revealing discoveries that could reshape our understanding of the continent's history and significance. The questions raised by the Antarctic Treaty's origins and implementation merge with emerging evidence that Antarctica has preserved more than ice cores and fossil records. As the frozen vault begins to open through climatic rather than political forces, we may discover whether the treaty's architects were protecting empty wilderness or guarding secrets whose revelation could challenge fundamental assumptions about Earth's history and humanity's place within it. The Antarctic Peninsula groans and fractures under a warming sky that would have been unimaginable to the explorers who first mapped its coastlines. Once thought immutable as stone, the ice has begun to surrender at a pace that startles even the climatologists who measure its retreat. In 2002, the Larsen B ice shelf, larger than Rhode Island, shattered in just 35 days, its fragments drifting into the Southern Ocean like broken cathedral glass. In 2017, the trillion-ton iceberg A68 calved from the Larsen Sea shelf, creating a waterway where solid ice had persisted for millennia. The vault of silence is opening not through human intervention, but through forces beyond any treaty's power to control. What climate change reveals may reshape not only our planet's future, but our understanding of its hidden past. As glaciers retreat and ice shelves collapse, they expose coastlines and landscapes unseen since before human civilization began, potentially unveiling evidence that has waited in frozen suspension for geological ages. When glaciers retreat, they do not reveal emptiness, but landscapes carved by ancient forces and preserved with crystalline perfection. Near the Ross Ice Shelf, recent melting has exposed rock formations that display what Dr. John Anderson described as geometric regularities inconsistent with natural erosion patterns. These features, now accessible to ground-based investigation for the first time in millennia, show alignments and proportions that suggest organizational principles rather than random geological processes. Satellite monitoring has detected metallic anomalies emerging from recently exposed bedrock, objects displaying compositional signatures that differ from known mineral deposits in the region. According to research conducted by the Antarctic Search for Meteorites program, some of these materials show crystalline structures that require formation temperatures and pressures not typical of terrestrial geology. The irony is profound and unsettling. For decades, the Antarctic Treaty has restricted human exploration of the continent, limiting access to authorized scientific personnel operating under strict international oversight. But nature itself is breaking that protective seal, revealing through climatic forces what human policies have kept hidden. The ice that preserved Antarctica's secrets is the same ice whose melting may expose them to unprecedented scrutiny. Dr. Eric Rignot, who studies Antarctic ice dynamics through satellite data, has noted that current melting rates could expose vast areas of previously inaccessible terrain within decades rather than centuries. Regions that have remained buried since the last interglacial period, over 120,000 years ago, may emerge into daylight, carrying evidence from eras when global geography was fundamentally different. This raises haunting questions about what we are prepared to discover and whether we possess the wisdom to interpret it correctly. The same forces that threaten coastal cities worldwide through sea level rise may simultaneously reveal archaeological or geological evidence that challenges our understanding of human history and technological development. As you stand here, in contemplation, at the edge of the world's greatest mystery, consider the chain of witnesses who have touched the edges of something vast and hidden. From the Ottoman cartographers who preserved impossible maps to the naval aviators who flew classified missions over endless ice, from the scientists who first glimpsed blood falls to the researchers now drilling into lakes sealed since before humans walked the earth. Each of them encountered fragments of a story too large for any single perspective to encompass. Whether that story reveals lost civilizations, preserved ecosystems, or simply the resilience of life in conditions once thought impossible, Antarctica remains Earth's greatest archive, a library written in languages we are still learning to read. The ancient maps whisper of knowledge that should not exist. The pyramid-shaped mountains rise with proportions too perfect for coincidence. The classified military operations suggest discoveries too significant for public disclosure. The subglacial lakes preserve life forms that redefine biological possibility. The Crimson Falls bleed memories of oceans older than complex life itself. All of these mysteries converge in ice that is now melting at unprecedented rates, potentially releasing evidence that has waited in darkness longer than human memory extends. We stand at a threshold where climatic revelation meets historical discovery, where the planet's changing face may expose truths that reshape our understanding of both past and future. The questions multiply like reflections in fractured ice. Are we witnessing the end of preservation or the beginning of revelation? Will melting ice expose evidence of advanced ancient civilizations? Or will it simply demonstrate that life and geological processes are more complex than we previously understood? As the frozen continent transforms under warming temperatures, will we find confirmation of our wildest speculations? Or will we discover that reality exceeds even our most imaginative theories? The frozen continent waits, its secrets patient as geological time, its silence deeper than space itself. But silence, like ice, is not eternal. Both will eventually yield to forces larger than human policy or scientific caution. When they do, the true history of Earth may finally step from shadow into light, carrying implications we can barely imagine for our understanding of who we are and where we came from. Sleep well, knowing that beneath the ice, In chambers dark as the cosmic void and older than memory, the greatest story ever told waits to be read. And perhaps, sooner than we expect, that story will begin to emerge into a world finally ready to listen to what Antarctica has been preserving in silence across the ages.